Ambassador Kyung-soo stood alone in the massive chamber. Above him, thousands of alien beings watched from their seats. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of crystal. Some floated as clouds of gas. All of them stared down at the single human representative with cold eyes. 30 years had passed since humans first met the Galactic Council. In the beginning, humanity was excited. They thought they would join a peaceful community of civilizations. They thought they would make friends among the stars. They were wrong. The Council called Earth a Tier 7 species. That meant humans were barely better than primitives. The Council banned human ships from most of their space. They refused to share technology. They treated humans like children who needed to be controlled. Now High Chancellor Vrek spoke. His voice came through translation devices in a cold, clicking tone. He was a Draxian, an insect-like creature with 6 legs and armor that gleamed under the chamber lights. The human species has failed to prove their worth to this council, Vrex announced. Therefore, by council law, they must pay tribute. Humanity will provide 40% of all resources from Earth each year. You will give us 3 of your colony worlds. You will send 10 million humans every year to serve in our security forces. The chamber filled with sounds of approval, clicks, whistles, and hums from hundreds of different species. To them, this was normal. Weak species paid tribute. That was how the galaxy worked. Kyung-soo felt his hands shake. Not from fear, but from anger. He already knew what his government had decided. But he had to play his role as the diplomat. I must speak with Earth's leadership before, he began. No consultation is needed, Vrex interrupted. You have 30 days to begin. If you refuse, we will enforce this demand with military force. The transmission ended. Kyung-soo was dismissed like a servant. Deep beneath the city of Geneva on Earth, the military command center was silent. Admiral Taewon stood at the head of a long table. Around him sat generals, intelligence directors, and government officials. They had all just watched the council's demand. The admiral was in his late 50s with gray hair and a face that showed no emotion. He had spent his entire life in the military. He understood only one language, power. There will be no tribute, he said quietly. His voice was calm, but everyone in the room felt the steel behind his words. A civilian official spoke up, his voice nervous. Admiral, they have thousands of worlds. Their fleets are massive. If we refuse, they will destroy us. Then let them try, Taewon replied. Director Haon, report. Director Haon stepped forward. She was the head of Earth's intelligence agency, a woman in her 40s who had spent decades gathering information about the Council. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the table with data. The Council is weak, she said. They haven't fought a real war in 800 years. Their tactics are old and predictable. Their ships are powerful but slow. Their command structure is divided by politics between different species. What are their weaknesses? Taewon asked. Haon smiled coldly. Their shields only work against energy weapons. They can't stop solid objects moving at near light speed. Their communication systems are slow, with a 6-hour delay between sectors. Most importantly, their main supply base is in the Keldara system. If we destroy it, a third of their fleet can't refuel. General Daejung slammed his fist on the table. He was a scarred veteran who had fought in the Mars Rebellion years ago. Then we strike first. We hit them hard before they know what's happening. We show them that humans don't bow to anyone. Taewon nodded slowly. He began to outline his plan. Phase 1. Complete silence. We cut all communication with the Council. They will think we are panicking, gathering resources to pay tribute, but we will be preparing for war. Phase 2. Deploy our stealth ships. Captain Jiwoo will take the EDS Horizon and 20 other destroyers into Council space. They will observe, gather intelligence, and wait for my signal. Phase 3. Build weapons. Dr. Hyrim will have unlimited resources. We need mass drivers, antimatter torpedoes, and kinetic weapons. Simple but devastating. Phase 4. Fortify the Sol system. General Daejung will turn every moon, every asteroid, every orbital platform into a weapons station. Phase 5. When the Council comes to enforce their demands, they will find not a frightened species begging for mercy, but an ambush. The room was silent for a moment. Then one official asked, "What if we lose?" Taewon looked at him with cold eyes. "Then we lose fighting as free humans, not as slaves." The next day, all human transmissions to Council space stopped. Every communication channel went dark. Every diplomatic contact was severed. Ambassador Kyung-soo was recalled to Earth. The Council monitoring stations detected the silence immediately. They reported it as expected behavior. Primitive species always panicked when faced with superior power. The humans were probably scrambling to gather the tribute. Everything was going according to plan. But in the darkness, humanity was moving. Captain Jiwoo prepared his crew aboard the EDS Horizon. The ship was new, coated in adaptive camouflage that made it invisible to most sensors. It could slip through space like a ghost. "We leave in 6 hours," Jiwoo told his officers. He was young for a captain, only in his mid-30s, but he had proven himself in countless simulations. "Our mission is observation only. We position ourselves near their supply bases and wait. When the Admiral gives the order, we strike." On Luna, in a hidden laboratory complex, Dr. Hiram watched as the first antimatter warhead passed its final test. The explosion, contained in a magnetic field, released more energy than a nuclear bomb. Her assistant looked nervous. "Doctor, if we use these weapons, the entire galaxy will know. They'll see us as monsters." Hiram didn't look away from the data screens. "Let them see us as monsters. Better to be feared than enslaved." In the asteroid belt, General Daejung oversaw the installation of railguns on a hollowed-out dwarf planet. The weapons were massive, capable of throwing projectiles at incredible speeds across millions of kilometers. "How many more installations?" he asked his engineer. 49 more, sir. By the end of the month, the entire Sol system will be a fortress." "Make it faster," Daejung ordered. "We don't have a month. We have days." Back in the command center, Admiral Taewon stood alone, staring at a star map. The map showed the positions of council worlds, fleet concentrations, and supply routes. All the information Director Hyun's spies had gathered over the years. Hyun entered quietly and stood beside him. "Do you think we can win?" she asked. Taewon was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Win? I don't know. But we will make them regret ever threatening us. They wanted tribute. We'll give them fire and death instead. The Council has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, Hyun said. They think they're invincible. Then they're about to learn a hard lesson," Taewon replied. "Humans survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We didn't come this far just to kneel before aliens who think they're our masters." Across human space, the mobilization continued in secret. Shipyards worked day and night. Factories produced weapons at maximum capacity. Soldiers trained for battles they hoped would never come, but knew were inevitable. The civilian population sensed something was happening. There was tension in the air, a feeling that everything was about to change. But the government kept the truth hidden. No need to cause panic before the storm arrived. 23 days remained until the Council's deadline. But humanity wasn't counting down to surrender. They were counting down to war. The silence from Earth was not weakness. It was not fear. It was the quiet before the strike, the moment when a predator stops moving before it attacks. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They had threatened the wrong species. 23 days remained before the Council's deadline. Across all human worlds, the preparation was total. Every shipyard operated at maximum capacity. Every factory produced weapons around the clock. Colony worlds that had been peaceful now bristled with orbital defense platforms. Most civilians didn't know the full truth, but they felt it. There was something in the air, a tension that made people look up at the stars with worry. Something big was coming. On the moon, deep inside a research complex, Dr. Hiram worked without sleep. She was developing humanity's most powerful weapon yet, the Kasaba howitzer. It was a nuclear bomb modified to focus its explosion into a single direction, creating a beam of plasma hotter than the surface of a star. The test chamber glowed with intense light as another prototype fired successfully. The beam cut through 10 meters of reinforced armor like it was paper. Her young assistant watched nervously. "Doctor, if we use these, the radiation will be visible across half a star system. Every species in the galaxy will know what we did." Hiram didn't look up from her computer screens. "Good. Let them know what happens when they threaten us." She checked the production schedule. 500 Kasaba howitzers would be ready in 18 days, enough to destroy entire fleets. "Increase production speed," she ordered. "We need 600. Far from Earth, at the edge of the Keldara system, Captain Jiwoo and his crew sat in complete darkness. The EDS Horizon drifted silently through space, its engines cold, its hull coated with adaptive camouflage. To any sensor, it looked like just another piece of space debris. Through the view screen, Jiwoo watched the massive orbital station. It was the Council's primary logistics hub, bigger than a small moon. Hundreds of cargo ships moved in and out, carrying fuel, ammunition, and supplies. This station supported a third of the Council's military fleet. His tactical officer whispered, even though no one could hear them in the vacuum of space. "Captain, we could destroy this station right now. Our torpedoes could cripple their entire supply network before they knew we were here." "Not yet," Jiwoo said quietly. "Admiral Taewan's orders are clear. We wait until they commit their forces to attacking Earth. Then we cut their supply lines. If we strike now, they'll just redirect their fleet and come at us from a different direction." He continued recording detailed scans. Every defensive position, every patrol route, every weak point in the station's armor. All the data was sent back to Earth through tightly encrypted quantum communications that the Council couldn't detect or intercept. In the asteroid belt of the Sol system, General Daijung stood on the command deck of what used to be the dwarf planet Ceres. The entire planetoid had been hollowed out and converted into a massive weapons platform. Railguns protruded from every crater. Missile silos covered the surface. Point defense lasers created a web of overlapping fire zones. A young officer approached him nervously. "Sir, intelligence reports that the Council fleet is much larger than expected. What if they bypass our defenses? What if they go straight for Earth?" Daejung looked at the officer with hard eyes. The general had fought in brutal conflicts before and bore the scars to prove it. "Then we make them pay for every kilometer they advance. Mars is fortified. Luna is armed. Every orbital platform will fight to the last shot. And if they reach Earth, they'll find 10 billion humans ready to resist." He pointed at the holographic display showing the Sol system. "We don't surrender. We don't negotiate. We make them bleed until they retreat or die. That's the only option." Back on Earth, Director Hyun sat in her secure office, surrounded by screens showing data from across the galaxy. She coordinated with dozens of human intelligence operatives who had been embedded in Council space for years. These agents posed as traitors, laborers, even diplomats from minor alien species. Now, after years of waiting, they were finally activated. A message appeared on her screen from an operative on a Council military world. She read it carefully. "Fleet movements confirmed. Council is assembling enforcement armada. 800 capital ships. 3,000 escort vessels. Estimated arrival at Sol system 32 days. Hyun allowed herself a cold smile. The Council was so confident they weren't even hiding their movements. They expected humanity to see the massive fleet and panic. They expected desperate last-minute negotiations. They expected humans to beg for mercy. Instead, humanity now knew exactly when and where to strike. She immediately sent the intelligence to Admiral Taewan with a simple message. "They're coming." Right on schedule. In orbit above Earth, Lieutenant Soo-jin led her squadron through brutal combat drills. She commanded Ghostwing, an experimental fighter unit flying ships that were small, fast, and deadly. The fighters were built around one simple idea: overwhelming speed and acceleration. Human pilots could survive higher G-forces than most alien species. The Council's pilots would black out at 8 Gs. Humans, with special training and medications, could remain conscious at 12 Gs or even higher. Soo-jin pulled her fighter into a sharp turn, feeling 12 times her normal weight crushing her into the seat. Her vision tunneled, blood vessels strained, but she stayed conscious through sheer willpower and the stimulants pumping through her system. Her targeting computer locked onto a simulated Council cruiser. She fired. The kinetic penetrator, a solid tungsten rod accelerated to incredible speed, would punch through shields and armor like they didn't exist. The simulation showed the enemy ship breaking apart. "Ghostwing. Excellent performance," came the voice from command control. "Rest and recover. In 2 weeks, you'll be doing this for real." Soo-jin landed her fighter and removed her helmet. Her hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline and the stimulants. She looked at her fellow pilots. They were all young, all volunteers. They all knew what they were signing up for. Ghostwing wasn't expected to survive the first battle. They were shock troops meant to hit hard and fast. But that was fine with Soo-jin. Better to die fighting than live as a slave. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, the Council's central station, High Chancellor Vrex reviewed reports from the human sector of space. His advisors stood before him, presenting their analysis. "All human communications have ceased," one advisor reported. "Sensor data shows minimal activity in their space. They appear to be consolidating resources. As expected, Frex said with satisfaction, the primitives are preparing to deliver tribute. Their silence proves they understand their place. Fleet Commander Tholan, a large reptilian creature covered in scales, bowed respectfully. Chancellor, the enforcement fleet will be ready to depart in 10 days. Should we send a diplomatic message offering them a chance to comply peacefully? No, Frex replied sharply. They had their chance at diplomacy. Now they will learn through force. Send the fleet with full power. Let them see 800 warships arrive in their system. Let them understand the futility of resistance. The Council leaders never considered an alternative explanation for humanity's silence. They never imagined that humans might be sharpening their weapons in the dark. They never thought to ask why a supposedly primitive species would go completely quiet instead of desperately trying to negotiate. It was a failure of imagination that would cost them dearly. Back in the Geneva Command Center, Admiral Taewon gathered his key officers for a final briefing before the battle. Director Ha-un, General Dae-jung, and various military commanders filled the room. The Council fleet will arrive in our system in approximately 30 days, Taewon began. They will expect to find us scrambling to assemble tribute. Instead, they will find a trap. He brought up the tactical display. When they drop out of FTL at the edge of the system, they'll be in a tight formation. Standard Council doctrine. That makes them an easy target for our long-range kinetic weapons. Ghostwing and our other fighter squadrons will launch immediately, targeting their carriers and command ships. General Dae-jung's fortress installations will engage with railguns and missiles. Dr. Hai-rim's Kasaba howitzers will fire once their shields are weakened. And Captain Jiwoo? Someone asked. The moment the battle begins here, Jiwoo will destroy the Keldara logistics hub. Without fuel and supplies, any Council ships that escape our ambush will be stranded. Taewon looked around the room at each officer. We get one chance at this. If we fail, humanity becomes a slave species. But if we succeed, we send a message to the entire galaxy. Humans don't kneel. What about casualties? An officer asked quietly. There will be casualties, Taewon said flatly. Many of them. But that's the price of freedom. Every person who dies in this battle dies free, not as a slave. The room was silent. Everyone understood. This wasn't just a battle. It was a statement. Humanity would rather burn than bow. As the officers filed out to their positions, Ha-un stayed behind with Taewon. Do you think they'll underestimate us? She asked. I'm counting on it, Taewon replied. Arrogance is their weakness. They've been the dominant power for so long they've forgotten what real war looks like. And if we're the ones underestimating them, Taewon smiled grimly. Then at least we'll go down fighting. The Council enforcement fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a hammer falling from the sky. 800 capital ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in a massive formation. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, carriers launching thousands of fighters, cruisers bristling with energy weapons. It was overwhelming force designed to make any species surrender immediately. Fleet Commander Tholan sat in his command chair and opened a communication channel to all human frequencies. This is the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. You have violated Council law by refusing tribute. Surrender your planetary leadership for judgment. Prepare to transfer all demanded resources. Resistance will result in the destruction of your orbital infrastructure and bombardment of your colonies. The transmission echoed across all human communication networks. Tholan waited for a response. Minutes passed. Nothing. He tried again, this time with more authority in his voice. Still only silence answered him. They're probably terrified, his second officer said. Shall we begin the advance toward their homeworld? Yes, Tholan ordered. Slow approach. Let them see our strength. Let them understand they cannot win. The massive fleet began moving inward toward Earth. Their sensors detected the expected defenses, orbital platforms around the planets, patrol ships, defensive satellites. Nothing that could threaten a fleet of this size. The Council forces advanced with confidence. They didn't see the stealth ships positioned behind them. They didn't detect the kinetic weapons accelerating from the outer system. They didn't realize the trap had already closed. In the Geneva Command Center, Admiral Taewon watched the tactical display. The Council fleet was exactly where he wanted them. Committed to their approach. Formation tight. Shields configured for forward engagement. He opened the command channel to all human forces. His voice was calm, almost gentle. All units weapons free. Show them what silence means. Lieutenant Sujin and Ghostwing launched from a concealed position inside a hollowed asteroid. 20 fighters accelerated at maximum burn. 16 times Earth's gravity crushed the pilots into their seats. Most alien species would have blacked out immediately. Human pilots, augmented and conditioned, stayed conscious through the brutal acceleration. Sujin's vision tunneled as blood rushed away from her brain, but she fought to stay focused. Her targeting computer achieved lock on a council carrier at the rear of their formation. Ghost leader to wing, firing on my mark. 3, 2, 1, fire. 20 kinetic warheads launched simultaneously. Each one was a simple tungsten rod, but they were traveling at 80% of light speed. The carrier's energy shields, designed to deflect lasers and plasma weapons, did absolutely nothing against solid projectiles moving that fast. The warheads punched through the carrier's hull and detonated internally. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash. 3,000 alien crew died instantly. 19 more explosions followed as Ghostwing's volleys found their targets. 20 council ships destroyed in the opening seconds of the battle. Before the council could react to the fighter attack, the real assault began. From the outer system, from positions in the Kuiper Belt, the mass drivers fired their payloads, hundreds of projectiles, each weighing several tons, accelerated to 90% of light speed. They had been launched 3 days earlier, timed perfectly to arrive at this exact moment. The council's sensors finally detected them, but detection meant nothing. You cannot dodge something traveling at near light speed. The projectiles arrived almost at the same instant as the light announcing their approach. 40 council capital ships simply ceased to exist. The kinetic impacts released energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. Ships broke apart. Hulls vaporized. Thousands more alien crew died before they even understood they were under attack. Halfway across the galaxy, Captain Jiwoo received his signal. The EDS Horizon and her sister ships dropped their stealth camouflage and powered up their reactors. They had been watching the Keldara logistics hub for weeks, memorizing every detail. Target the main fuel depot, Jiwoo ordered calmly. We're not leaving them anything to fight with. Fire all torpedoes. Antimatter torpedoes streaked across the void. The massive orbital station, completely unprepared for an attack this far from the battle, had minimal active defenses. The torpedoes struck the primary fuel storage tanks that supplied hundreds of council ships. The explosion was visible from the outer planets of the system. Quadrillions of liters of refined starship fuel ignited in a devastating chain reaction. The station broke apart. Secondary explosions rippled through docked vessels and repair facilities. In 30 seconds, the Council's entire logistics network collapsed. Back in the Sol system, Fleet Commander Tholen stared at his tactical display in disbelief. In less than 10 minutes, his fleet had been reduced from 800 ships to just over 500 combat-effective vessels. The primitive species was supposed to beg for mercy. Instead, they had been waiting with weapons he had never imagined. All ships return fire, he screamed. Target those defensive positions. Destroy everything! The Council fleet finally began to respond. Energy weapons lit up space as they targeted the human defenses. But General Daejung's fortress worlds were ready. From Ceres, Mars, and dozens of armed asteroids, railgun volleys erupted. Missiles by the thousands launched from hidden silos. Point defense lasers created a deadly web of fire. The Council advanced and they bled. Every kilometer toward Earth cost them ships. Their shields were powerful, designed to stop energy weapons. But humanity's weapons were simple and brutal. Solid projectiles, chemical explosives, kinetic force. And there were so many of them. Council ships began to break formation, trying to spread out and reduce casualties. But that only made them easier targets for the coordinated human defenses. In the Geneva Command Center, Taiwan watched the battle unfold. Dr. Rim. They're grouping their capital ships for a concentrated push. Deploy the Kasaba howitzers. Full spread. From hidden platforms throughout the inner solar system, 500 nuclear-pumped plasma weapons activated. Each platform positioned itself carefully, aimed at a specific Council capital ship, and fired. 500 nuclear warheads detonated. But these weren't normal explosions. The energy was shaped, focused into tight beams of plasma hotter than the surface of a star. The beams crossed millions of kilometers in seconds. Council shields tried to deflect the plasma. They failed. The beams cut through armor plating like a torch through butter. Ships broke apart. Reactors went critical. Entire crews were vaporized instantly. In 20 seconds, 300 more Council ships were destroyed or crippled beyond repair. Tholen's command ship shuddered as explosions rocked nearby vessels. Alarms screamed throughout the bridge. His tactical officer shouted damage reports, but Tholen barely heard them. He was staring at the display, watching his fleet die. His second-in-command grabbed his arm. "Commander, we must retreat. We've lost over 60% of the fleet. If we stay, we'll all die." Pride warred with survival instinct in Tholen's mind. The Council had never retreated from a lesser species. But the Council had never faced an enemy like this. Another wave of human missiles struck the fleet. His flagship shook violently. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Casualties in the thousands. "All ships," Tholen said, his voice breaking. "Retreat to rally point. Maximum speed." "Retreat!" The order went out across the battered fleet. Ships that could still move began breaking away, fleeing toward the edge of the system. The disciplined formation dissolved into chaos. Every ship fled independently, desperate to escape the killing field. Human forces pursued, harrying them all the way. Fighters picked off damaged stragglers. Long-range missiles found ships with failing shields. The retreat became a rout. When the surviving Council ships finally reached the edge of the system and jumped to faster-than-light travel, they left behind over 500 burning wrecks. Hundreds of thousands of alien crew were dead. The largest enforcement fleet assembled in 2 centuries had been shattered in less than 2 hours. In Geneva, the command center erupted in cheers. Officers embraced. Some cried with relief. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. Admiral Taiwan didn't join the celebration. He stood quietly, watching the tactical display as the last enemy ship disappeared from sensors. Director Haon approached him. "Casualty reports," she said quietly. "We lost 43 ships. 18 defense platforms destroyed. Approximately 20,000 dead." "And them?" Taiwan asked. "Conservative estimates, over 500,000 alien crew killed or captured. 537 ships confirmed destroyed. Captain Jiwoo reports the Keldara logistics hub is completely gone. The Council's ability to project military power is crippled." Taiwan nodded slowly. He allowed himself a small smile. "Good, now they know. Humanity doesn't pay tribute. We take it." He turned to address the room, and the cheering stopped. This was one battle. The war is just beginning. The Council won't accept this defeat. They'll come back with more ships, more allies, more determination. We need to be ready. Hayun nodded. "What are your orders, Admiral?" "We don't wait for them to recover. We take the fight to them. We hit their worlds, their fleets, their infrastructure. We make them understand that threatening humanity was the biggest mistake they ever made." The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A Tier 7 species, barely more advanced than primitives according to Council classification, had destroyed an enforcement fleet. It was unthinkable, impossible. Yet it had happened. On Nexus Prime, the Council chambers descended into chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others questioned whether war with humanity was wise. The unity that had held the Council together for millennia began to crack. High Chancellor Vrek slammed his appendages on the podium, trying to restore order. "Silence. The humans have committed an act of war against galactic stability. They must be exterminated as an example to all who would defy the Council." The chamber quieted, but the tension remained. Many species agreed with Vrex. The tribute system benefited them, and they feared what would happen if other species followed humanity's example. But others had watched the battle footage. They had seen human tactics, human weapons, human determination. This wasn't a lucky victory. It was calculated warfare. A representative from the Peltharian collective stood. "Chancellor, perhaps we should reconsider our position. The humans clearly possess significant military capability. Perhaps reclassification and negotiation would be..." "Negotiation?" Vrex's voice dripped with contempt. "You suggest we reward their violence? If we yield now, every minor species will see that defiance works. The Council will collapse. No, we will assemble the Grand Armada. Every member species will contribute ships. We will show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge our authority." The vote was called. The room divided almost evenly, but fear of losing control ultimately won. The motion passed. 3,000 warships would be assembled, representing 10% of the Council's total military might. It would be the largest fleet mobilized in over 200 years. On Earth, Admiral Taiwan addressed the unified government. The civilian leaders were terrified. They had hoped the victory would lead to peace talks. Instead, the council had declared total war. 3,000 ships, one official said, voice trembling. We barely survived 800. How can we possibly face 3,000? We don't fight them here, Taiwan replied calmly. We don't let them mass their forces and come at us in one overwhelming strike. We take the war to them. We attack their worlds, their trade routes, their civilian infrastructure. We make the cost so high that their alliance falls apart. Director Ha-Yun stepped forward, activating a holographic display. The council isn't truly united. It's an alliance of self-interested species held together by profit and fear. Intelligence indicates 23 species are already questioning whether this war is worth the cost. We can exploit that. We've completed construction of 200 stealth destroyers, General Daejung added. Small, fast, armed with antimatter weapons. We can deploy them throughout council space. Hit multiple targets simultaneously. Create chaos and fear, Taiwan nodded. Operation Widowmaker begins immediately. We become the nightmare they can't escape. We strike everywhere and nowhere. We make them afraid to sleep. Captain Jiwoo received new orders. The EDS Horizon would lead a task force of 20 stealth destroyers on the most audacious mission yet. A strike on Draxus Prime, the homeworld of High Chancellor Vrex himself. Jiwoo briefed his crew on the plan. This isn't about destroying their planet. We're not interested in genocide. This is about sending a message nowhere is safe, not even their capital world. The task force slipped through council space like ghosts. They arrived in the Draxus system and positioned themselves in the asteroid belt. For 3 days, they observed. The planet was heavily defended with orbital platforms, patrol fleets, and early warning systems. But all the defenses faced outward, expecting threats from known attack vectors. Jiwoo waited for the perfect moment. During a shift change in the defense fleet, when coordination was weakest, he gave the order to strike. Antimatter torpedoes destroyed 12 defense platforms in the first salvo. Kinetic weapons shredded 3 patrol carriers. Then the Horizon launched a single missile toward the planet's surface. It wasn't aimed at cities or military bases. It targeted the ocean, 200 kilometers from the capital. The warhead detonated underwater. The tsunami it created was massive, visible from orbit. It didn't reach the capital city. It wasn't meant to, but the message was clear. We can reach your homeworld. We can devastate your population. We choose not to, for now. Before the Draxian defense fleet could respond, the human ships vanished back into the darkness of space. The attack on Draxus Prime shocked the entire galaxy. If the Chancellor's own world wasn't safe, nowhere was. Over the following weeks, human strike forces hit dozens of targets across council space. Trade convoys disappeared without a trace. Industrial orbital factories exploded. Communication relay stations went dark. The Council's vast infrastructure, built over thousands of years, began to crumble under coordinated assault. The political effects were immediate. The Peltharian Collective withdrew its ships from the Grand Armada, citing defensive concerns for their own territory. 3 minor species sued for separate peace with humanity. The Asheri Confederation, whose profitable trade routes had been devastated, openly criticized the Council's strategy. High Chancellor Vrex responded with increasingly authoritarian measures. He declared martial law across council space. He seized direct control of wavering species' military forces. He accelerated the Grand Armada's deployment schedule, determined to crush humanity before the alliance completely fell apart. But each authoritarian action pushed more species toward neutrality, or even sympathy with humanity. The Council was destroying itself from within. Lieutenant Su Jin received new orders for Ghostwing. They were assigned what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Delay the Grand Armada's advance long enough for Earth's defenses to be reinforced. 20 fighters against 3,000 capital ships. Su Jin gathered her pilots. They all knew the odds. They all understood they probably wouldn't survive. She looked at each of them. We're Ghostwing. They call us that because we're supposed to be invisible, already dead. But before we go, we're going to make sure they remember us. Every pilot volunteered, not because they wanted to die, but because they understood what they were fighting for. Freedom meant nothing if you weren't willing to die for it. The Grand Armada began its advance toward human space. The formation was so large it took 6 hours for all ships to emerge from faster-than-light travel. 3,000 warships representing dozens of species, all united in their determination to crush humanity. Ghostwing waited in a debris field from an earlier battle. Their fighters were powered down, invisible among the wreckage. Sujin watched the massive fleet pass by. It was like watching a metal moon drift through space. When the last ships of the formation came into range, she gave the order. All units, light them up. Target the flagship. Maximum burn. We're not coming back, so make every shot count. 20 fighters accelerated to maximum velocity and punched into the Armada's rear formation. They weren't trying to destroy the fleet. That would be impossible. Their goal was to create chaos, to damage command and control, to buy time. Sujin targeted the Armada's flagship, a dreadnought so large it had its own gravity. Her fighter carried a single antimatter warhead, modified for maximum yield. She armed it manually, overriding every safety protocol. Point defense fire from the flagship shredded her fighter's hull. Warning alarm screamed. Her left wing disintegrated. The controls became sluggish. She wasn't going to make a clean attack run, so she changed the plan. Ghost Leader to all units. It's been an honor flying with you. See you on the other side. She aimed her dying fighter directly at the flagship's command section and pushed her engines to maximum. The antimatter warhead detonated on impact. The flagship's shields failed completely. The explosion tore through 16 decks, destroying the primary command center and killing 5,000 aliens, including several high-ranking fleet officers. The flagship didn't sink. It was too large for that, but it was crippled, its command structure destroyed. The Grand Armada's advance slowed as ships broke formation to assist the damaged vessel. Ghostwing bought humanity 72 hours. None of the pilots survived, but their sacrifice would be remembered. In Geneva, Admiral Taiwan received the news. He allowed himself 5 seconds of silence to honor the fallen. Then he returned to the strategic display. 72 hours. That was all they had earned. But it might be enough. Dr. Hiram entered the command center. Admiral, Project Daybreak is fully operational. Project Daybreak. The weapon Taiwan had hoped they would never need. A quantum-entangled network of antimatter charges positioned at every major council industrial world. All could be detonated simultaneously. The casualties would be in the billions. Entire civilizations would burn. Not yet, Taiwan said. We give them one last chance to stop. He opened a transmission to every council world, every species, every ship in the galaxy. This is Admiral Taiwan of Earth. Your Grand Armada approaches our home. We could activate Project Daybreak right now and reduce your core worlds to ash. We choose not to, because unlike your council, we understand the difference between strength and cruelty. The council chambers on Nexus Prime erupted into the most heated debate in its 10,000-year history. Every species representative had seen Admiral Taiwan's transmission. Intelligence agencies had confirmed the threat was real. Humanity had positioned weapons throughout council space. Project Daybreak was not a bluff. The chamber divided into two clear camps. Some species demanded total war, arguing that yielding to human threats would destroy the council's authority forever. Others argued for immediate withdrawal, pointing out that mutual destruction served no one's interests. High Chancellor Vrex stood at the podium, his voice strained. If we surrender to these primitives now, the council is finished. Every minor species will learn that violence is rewarded. Our entire system of galactic order will collapse, the Peltharian representative stood to respond. And if we continue this war, Chancellor? The humans have proven they can strike anywhere. They've devastated our logistics. They've attacked our homeworlds. If we push forward, they will activate this doomsday weapon and we all lose everything, another voice called out from the crowd. The humans ask only to be treated as equals. They don't demand tribute from us. They don't seek to conquer our worlds. They simply refuse to submit. Is that worth destroying our civilization? The debate raged for hours. But slowly, pragmatism began to win over pride. Species that depended on trade calculated their losses. Military leaders assessed the true cost of continuing the war. The intelligence reports were clear. Humanity was willing to follow through on their threat. Finally, a vote was called. The chamber fell silent as the results appeared on the displays. The margin was narrow, but survival instinct had won. The Grand Armada would be ordered to halt its advance. Negotiations would begin. High Chancellor Vrex stared at the results in disbelief. Then, with quiet dignity, he stepped down from the podium. His political career was over. The Council would need new leadership for this new era. Ambassador Kyung-soo returned to Nexus Prime, but this time everything was different. He wasn't a representative of a subjugated species begging for consideration. He was the voice of a military power that the Council could neither ignore nor defeat. The meeting took place in a neutral chamber, with both sides heavily monitored. The new interim chancellor was a Keltheran named Rix, known for pragmatism rather than pride. Rix got straight to the point. "What are humanity's terms for peace?" Rix asked. Kyung-soo placed a data tablet on the table. 1. All demands for tribute are permanently rescinded. Humanity will never pay tribute to the Council or any other power. 2. Humanity is immediately reclassified as a Tier 2 species with full voting rights in all Council decisions. 3. Mutual Defense Pact. Humanity will contribute to galactic security, but as equals, not subjects. 4. Open technology exchange on fair terms. No more restrictions on human access to Council knowledge. Rick studied the demands carefully. And if we refuse? Kyung-soo met the Chancellor's eyes without flinching. Then Project Daybreak activates and we all lose. Admiral Tae-wan is not bluffing. Neither am I. The silence stretched between them. Rix understood the position completely. The demands were harsh, but they weren't impossible. More importantly, they offered a path forward that didn't end with billions dead and civilization in ruins. "We will accept these terms," Rix said finally, "with one condition. Project Daybreak must be dismantled under Council supervision." Kyung-soo shook his head slowly. "No, the weapons remain in place. Consider it insurance against future misunderstandings. However, I will agree to this. If the Council honors this treaty faithfully for 25 years, humanity will discuss gradual disarmament." It was a bitter arrangement. The Council would exist under permanent threat. But Rix had no real choice. The alternative was unthinkable. "Agreed," Rix said quietly. The treaty was signed within hours. The war was over. Humanity had won not through superior numbers or technology, but through determination, tactical brilliance, and the willingness to risk everything for freedom. 1 year later, Earth had changed. The Sol system remained heavily armed, but the immediate crisis had passed. Trade with Council species resumed. Human ships traveled freely through what had once been restricted space. Technology exchange programs began, though humanity was careful about what they shared. Admiral Tae-wan stood at the observation window in Geneva Command, looking up at the stars. Director Ha-Yun entered and stood beside him. "The Council is honoring the treaty," she reported. "Trade is flowing. Several minor species have approached us directly for defense pacts. Some see us as protectors against Council overreach." "And Project Daybreak?" Tae-wan asked. "Still fully operational. All charges are maintained and ready. Some government officials want to dismantle it. They say the war is over, that we should take the moral high ground." Tae-wan turned to look at her. "What do you think?" "I think the Council respected us only when they feared us," Ha-un said. "The moment that fear fades, old habits will return. Different leaders, same imperial thinking." "I agree," Tae-wan said. "Project Daybreak remains active. Forever, if necessary. Peace only works when backed by the ability to wage war." Captain Ji-woo received a new assignment. The EDS Horizon was refitted with the latest technology, including some systems reverse-engineered from captured Council ships. He now commanded the Earth Exploration Corps, a fleet tasked with mapping unexplored regions of the galaxy. But it wasn't just exploration. Every ship was heavily armed. Every crew trained for combat. Humanity was expanding into the galaxy with eyes wide open and weapons ready. Before his first mission, Ji-woo addressed his crew. "We're not conquerors. We don't enslave other species or demand tribute, but we're not victims either. If we encounter threats, we eliminate them. If we find allies, we protect them. The galaxy needs to learn a new rule. Humans don't kneel to anyone." On the moon, Dr. Hiram continued her work. The Quantum Weapons Initiative had evolved into the Advanced Defense Research Division. She now led hundreds of scientists developing both offensive and defensive systems. A young scientist asked her, "Doctor, do you think we'll ever live in a galaxy without war?" Hiram considered the question. "Maybe someday, but not in our lifetime. Peace isn't given freely. It must be maintained through strength. The weapons we build aren't just for fighting. They're to make war so terrible that rational beings choose peace instead." On Mars, General Daijung trained the next generation of officers. These young soldiers had never known the fear of the tribute demand. They only knew victory. That worried the general. He gathered them for a lesson. We won one war. That doesn't make us invincible. Somewhere out there, someone is watching us. Someone is studying our tactics. Someone is building weapons to counter ours. Your job is to be ready when they come. Complacency kills civilizations faster than any weapon. On Luna, a monument was built to honor Ghostwing. It depicted a fighter pilot looking toward the stars. The inscription read simply, Lieutenant Sujin and Ghostwing. They bought us tomorrow. Thousands attended the dedication ceremony. Admiral Taiwan gave the eulogy, his voice steady but his eyes showing the weight of command. They knew they wouldn't survive, he said. They went anyway. Not because they were ordered to, but because they understood that some things are worth dying for. Freedom, sovereignty, the right to exist without bowing to tyrants. Ghostwing proved that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology. It's our willingness to sacrifice everything for what we believe in. 10 years after the war, Ambassador Kyung-soo sat in the council chambers. But now he was one of 12 human representatives. Earth held significant voting power. Several minor species had formed defensive alliances with humanity. The galaxy had fundamentally changed. The council was more democratic now. The tribute system had been abolished entirely. Species interacted as equals rather than masters and servants. It seemed like genuine progress, but everyone knew the real reason for the change. Not because the council had suddenly become enlightened, but because humanity had proven that defiance was possible and could succeed. The threat of Project Daybreak still hung over everything, an invisible hand maintaining the peace. Kyung-soo received a private message from Admiral Taiwan. It was brief. Project Daybreak remains active. Just in case, Kyung-soo smiled slightly. The Admiral never changed, always preparing for the next war even in peacetime. But perhaps that was why humanity survived. Not because they were the strongest or smartest, but because they never forgot that peace was temporary. Deep in space, 30 light-years from Earth, an automated probe drifted through the void. It had been broadcasting continuously since the end of the war, sending its message in every known language to anyone who would listen. The message was simple and clear. This is humanity. We do not seek conflict. We do not desire dominion over others, but we will not be subjugated. We will not pay tribute. We will not kneel. To those who would threaten us, remember what happened when the Galactic Council demanded our submission. Remember that silence can be a weapon. Remember that humans answer threats with fire. To those who seek friendship, we welcome you as equals. We will stand with you against tyranny. We will share our strength freely. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. The probe continued its journey through the stars.